Cranes. Sometimes we need to lift things, whether that's to move it from one place to another or to make things easier to work on. In creative mode, we have the physics staff. However, for survival builds, we're going to have to be more resourceful. So today, one of those resources we're messing with is cranes. To start, I feel like the design of your crane should follow its intended use, whether that's moving the same structure up and down repeatedly like a lift, or if you need to lift a large variety of objects to various different places. In my case, I'm trying to design cranes for the specific use of a shipyard, basically for suspending the large hulls and pieces of ships up off the ground so I can get to the underside and work on them without it tipping over. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. As I started tinkering with some different designs, I was slapped upside the head with one of the realities of the Create physics engine. There's essentially two kinds of things you can lift: static blocks and assembled physics entities. Both are liftable, but they behave differently and require different techniques. Static blocks can be lifted with the rope pulley. The rope comes down until it touches a block, then can be pulled back up, taking the block with it. You can disconnect the block by breaking the rope. Don't worry, the pulley generates another one that you can lower back down to repeat the process. Attaching blocks together with glue will allow you to lift all of them up at once. However, this only works on static blocks. Anything that is assembled as a physics object, the rope from the pulley will pass straight through. I did find out that you can grab static blocks through the physics blocks, and you can kind of lift them up this way. It kind of works. However, to lift the physics blocks directly, you must use the rope winch, which is very distinct from the rope pulley. By placing a rope connector on the physics blocks and connecting the rope to the winch, you can tighten the rope and lift the contraption, whilst maintaining its physics. The trickiness lies in that the rope winch itself can't be moved by Create's normal mechanisms. Mechanical pistons won't move it. Attaching it to an arm mounted to a bearing, it won't move it either. It can't stick to gantries, and you can't glue it to anything as part of a contraption. You can mount it directly onto a physics contraption, but that's about it. I spent a good couple hours trying to figure out a way to mount it onto various mechanical linkages and such so that I could position it, with no avail. Once it's placed, it's stuck there. That's not the case with the rope pulley, however. That can be mounted to pretty much whatever mechanism you like, and it will move as intended. Basically, between the pulley and the winch, you can kind of do everything, but not all of it at once. So that's really the main decision you have to make. Are you going to focus on winching up simulated blocks with physics that require the winch to be pretty much stationary, or are you going to pick up blocks that are static, which allows you to use the much more flexible rope pulley? For me, I really wanted to use the winch, since most of my bolt holes are already physics and I just need to move them around. Side note, I found out that you can use the physics assembler in reverse, and that will put all the blocks back to being static. So that's pretty neat, and it actually means that if you're willing to convert back and forth, you can use the pulley to move stuff around. Just thought that'd be a good thing to note. But anyway, since the winch can't be moved with the normal mechanisms, I decided I'd try to make a gantry crane with it. Basically, I'd make a cart that holds the winch and can drive back and forth on a track. The cart would be its own physics contraption in order to carry the winch, since that's the only way to really move it around, and it would rely on the track to keep it in place where it needs to be. I used mechanical belts mounted on shafts to propel the cart back and forth, and did my best to keep everything reasonably compact, although the track needed to be 5 blocks wide so that the cart has extra room to slot in without getting stuck. The normal 3 wide didn't quite work that well. After tinkering with everything to make sure it all has power from the portable engine, I added some wireless redstone links so I can control the cart remotely with this handy linked controller. And with that, the simple gantry crane is ready for testing. This design only has 4 controls. The A and D keys drive the cart back and forth along its track. The W and S keys raise and lower the winch. As you can see, it doesn't work half bad. The cart moves about as fast as you want it to, about realistic speed for a crane. I didn't have any issues with it getting stuck, at least so far. The winch also didn't seem to struggle at all with any of the payloads I attached to it. Anything I hooked up, it seemed to lift just fine. Also, because the track is just solid blocks, it's very easy to make it taller or longer if you'd want to. Although this is a far from perfect design, at least in my opinion. For one, this design only has one axis. It's not capable of moving things further away or closer to me, only from side to side. Second, even though it can lift pretty much anything, getting the rope attached to the winch can be challenging if you're in survival. The winch doesn't exactly have a rope to lower down like the pulley does. You have to right-click the object you want to hook up, climb up, and right-click on the winch. Meaning, depending on how high your crane is, that's how high you have to go to actually attach the rope to lift anything. Also, because all the machinery is housed in the cart, if the engine runs out of fuel, you're going to have to climb up there to refuel it. There's not really a way to power it from the ground. Now, none of those things explicitly make this design unusable, but it definitely limits its practicality, which is kind of rough for something that's sole purpose of existing is to make building other things easier. So with these limitations in mind, I went ahead and tried to build an improved Mark II. As you can see, the main improvement of the Mark II is the second axis of movement. The crane can move objects pretty much anywhere inside this cube, which is pretty nice. It functions the same as the previous design, using mechanical belts to propel itself along solid block tracks. However, this design actually uses two separate carts, both of which are physics objects. The first cart is super wide and essentially just a motorized version of the entire track from the first design, and the second cart is a little bit more compact, but is pretty much the same as the original from the first design. It just slots into the track on the second cart. And they all still function off the same wireless redstone links, so we can control it all with the linked controller. This one is definitely pretty cool to play around with, and a lot more practical for moving things. However, I still wouldn't call it perfect. And you still have to climb up top if you want to attach things to the winches, and you're going to have to refuel now not just one, but two engines. It also has another quirk to it, and that being the physics. You see, before with just the one physical cart moving around on a set track, it really didn't have that hard a time staying locked in. However, with this one, there's a little bit more slack, especially since this cart is super wide. That's probably due to the fact I had to add a gap here to make sure all the machinery behaved itself, and you could probably design your way around that. But it's definitely pretty complicated to construct and get all the pieces to play nice with each other. They tend to get stuck. It's a very tight fit. Tricky enough to get it all working here in the creative world. I'm not sure how easy it would be in survival, where you can't fly or have a magic stick that moves things where you tell it to. I mean, heaven forbid you're trying to build this and one of the carts fall off. I'm not sure how you're going to get that back up there. You're going to have to build a crane, which is rough when you're trying to build a crane. It's a lot like trying to open one of those packs of scissors without the scissors, because the scissors are in the package. If you can manage to assemble it, though, I think it is pretty usable. Pretty much any physics object in here you can hook up to and move around inside the vicinity of the crane. But it does require a lot of setup and tweak to get working, and a little extra babysitting during use to make sure things don't do this. Was this the design I'm going to use for building ships in survival? Honestly, probably not. It's great that it can pick things up and move them anywhere, but I usually don't need to move them with this much precision. I usually just need to drag it slightly off to one direction or to the other, and it really doesn't need to be all that precise. At most, it just needs to lift the thing up so I can get underneath it. And this is kind of overkill for that. Honestly, a winch on top of a block high up will probably do exactly what I need it to. In fact, before this, I experimented with a simple frame structure like this, where I can just place a winch and hand crank it at whatever position I need. This actually gives me a lot of flexibility with where the lines go and how exactly I want to hold everything in the air, and it doesn't require a ton of complex setup, just some scaffolding and a lot of food. You could even build a fixed 4-post setup like this, where you have a winch at each corner that you can stretch ropes between to drag things around and just get it roughly positioned without having to climb a bunch of ladders and eat a ton of food. You could even theoretically hook this all up to a linked controller so you could actuate all 4 corners at once. Although I honestly don't care. I'm fine walking around a little bit. While not nearly as fancy as the twin-axis gantry crane, I think this setup is a lot more practical and simpler to construct. I'd rather spend my time focused on building my ships, not building the crane that I want to use to build said ship. One thing I think might be interesting to try is having a few of these pulleys attached to a glued together floor. This way you could actually raise and lower the level of the floor and everything resting on it. So in theory, you could build something on the floor, raise it up, attach it to the frame at the top of your structure, and then lower the floor back down, and the object will stay wherever you tied it. It could have its uses, but I'm also trying to figure out how to turn a setup like this into a functional dry dock, and I'm not sure that this and water is going to play nice together. I don't know. I'll have to play with that. But that concludes my thoughts and experiments with cranes, at least for now. Hopefully some of the info in this video will be helpful to you in your builds. And if you do manage to make improvements to any of these designs, or just manage to make them work, let me know in the comments. It's always fun for me. Anyway, that's all. Have a good one.